The throne room of the Zaith Dominion shimmered in golden light. The air smelled of metal and smoke, carried from the forges below. Thousands of years of victory had made the Zaith proud and cruel. Their banners hung high, showing scenes of conquered worlds. Green planets burned into black dust. On the highest throne sat Queen Vishara, ruler of 10,000 systems. Her chitin armor glowed like molten gold, her long claws clicking softly on the armrest. Her eyes were deep purple, bright with confidence and hunger. War was her empire's way of life. And now, a new species had entered their path. Humans. The Zaith had crushed hundreds of civilizations before. None had lasted long. When they first met the humans, the Queen thought it would be the same. Another quick war, another victory. But this war was different. Reports came every day. Planets bombed, yes, but also Zaith fleets destroyed. Soldiers missing. Entire battalions lost without a signal. The Queen's war advisors stood below her throne, armor shining, heads bowed. "Your Majesty," said General Kreth, his mandibles trembling. "Our forces on the Rim colonies report heavy resistance. The humans fight to the last soldier. Even when surrounded, they refuse to surrender." Vishara leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. "Then they are fools. Resistance means nothing when facing the Dominion." Another general stepped forward. "Majesty, with respect, and these are not ordinary fools. They're soldiers. They don't fear death. They fight even when mortally wounded. Their ships ram ours when their weapons fail." "It's as if they are desperate?" she cut in. The general hesitated. "No, my queen. As if they enjoy it." The throne room went silent. Only the hum of the great engines beneath the ship filled the air. Vishara tapped her claw slowly. "Enjoy war? No creature enjoys chaos, only those born from it." She rose from her throne, tall and sharp like a living blade. "Send more fleets. Crush their colonies. Burn their soil. I want their homeworld's location by the next cycle." The generals bowed low and began to retreat, but one of them remained. A small, silver-armored intelligence officer. He held a data crystal in trembling hands. "My queen," he said, voice shaking, "there is something else you must see." Vishara turned, annoyed. "Speak." The officer placed the crystal on the console. A hologram projected in the air. A battle recording from a Zaith cruiser. The image shook violently, alarms wailing in the background. The screen showed human marines storming through smoke and fire, their armor blackened and scarred, their weapons roaring. But one man stood out. He moved like he had nothing to lose. Calm, silent. His face was covered in soot and blood, but his eyes were clear and cold and focused. In the recording, he led a squad through corridors filled with enemy fire. Every move was precise, every command short and sharp. He carried a wounded soldier on one shoulder and still fired his rifle with the other hand. The hologram froze on his face. "Name," Vishara ordered. The officer's mandibles clicked nervously. "Sergeant Marcus Hale of the Human Coalition. Survived over 16 confirmed battles. Responsible for the destruction of 3 Dominion cruisers. Rumors say he led the defense of Raxus Prime before the planet was glassed." The Queen frowned. "One human? You waste my time with myths." The officer shook his head. "Majesty, there's more. Every fleet that reports contact with this soldier disappears. Their ships are found later, silent, empty, or drifting. Our troops call him the Ghost of Raxus." Vishara's wings twitched with irritation. "Superstition. No single being can destroy my fleets." But the room stayed quiet. No one dared agree or disagree. For a long time she watched the frozen hologram of the human soldier. There was something in those eyes. Something she did not like. It was not anger. It was certainty. The message days later, a new report arrived from the front lines. The Queen listened as her fleet commander spoke through the comms. "Majesty, the human colonies have fallen. Their defense stations are gone. We found a single escape pod near the ruins. We are retrieving it now." Vishara smirked. "Good, bring it to me. Let us see what fear looks like." Hours passed before the escape pod was carried aboard her flagship, the Vornkith, the pride of the Dominion. The pod was old and burned, its metal half melted by plasma fire. Inside was a single occupant, a human male, barely alive. The medics placed him on a containment bed inside the ship's medical bay. His uniform was torn, but the name tag was still visible. M. Hale. The Queen stared at it for several seconds. Then she looked at the human's still face. "So the ghost bleeds after all," she whispered. The doctors surrounded the bed, scanning and measuring. "Majesty, his biology is unstable. Temperature rising. Heart rate abnormal. He should be dead." "Then kill him," she said coldly. But before the doctor could inject the poison, the human's hand shot up and grabbed the injector. The room froze. Marcus Hale opened his eyes. For a moment, no one spoke. His gaze swept across the room. Calm. Steady. Too calm for someone waking up in an enemy ship. The Queen tilted her head slightly. "So the ghost lives." Hale looked at her, his voice quiet but firm. "You really shouldn't have brought me here." The Queen's fear Vishara dismissed the others. The door sealed behind them. Only she and the human remained. She circled the bed slowly, studying him. His body was covered in scars, some old, some fresh. The air smelled faintly of blood and oil. "You are the one they whisper about," she said. "Sergeant Marcus Hale, the human who burns ships with his bare hands." Hale smiled faintly. "Rumors grow fast. I'm just a soldier." "Just a soldier does not destroy my fleets," she said sharply. He met her gaze, unflinching. "Maybe your fleets weren't as strong as you thought." Her claws tightened, but she held back her anger. Instead, she leaned closer. "Tell me, human, why do your kind fight like mad beasts? Why do you not fear death?" He looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because where we come from, death is everywhere. Our world kills us every day, storms, hunger, disease. We learned early that fear doesn't save you. Only standing together does." The Queen said nothing. He continued, his tone almost soft. "You fight for power. We fight for people. That's the difference." Her mandibles clicked once. "You speak like a preacher, not a soldier." He looked at the walls around them, the humming of alien engines filling the silence. "You'll see the difference soon." The shadow in the halls that night, strange things began to happen on the Vornketh. Security lights flickered. Doors opened and closed on their own. Guards reported missing equipment, tools, weapons, power cells. The engineers blamed system errors. The general suspected sabotage. The Queen ordered double patrols, but deep inside the ship, a human figure moved silently through the shadows. Marcus Hale had escaped. He used no weapons, only stolen tools and his bare hands. He disabled security nodes, jammed sensors, and released prisoners from their cells. Zaith, humans, and even other captured species. Everywhere he passed, confusion followed. The ship's crew began to panic. Some swore they saw him in 2 places at once. By the time the Queen realized what was happening, half her ship was already in chaos. She stormed into the command center. "Find him!" she roared. "Seal the lower decks." But the command officer turned slowly, his voice shaking. "Majesty, he's already here." The Queen froze. The doors behind her opened. Marcus Hale stepped inside the command hall, calm and unarmed, his eyes reflecting the fire from the consoles. Behind him, guards lay unconscious, not dead. He didn't attack. He didn't shout. He just looked around the hall, then at her. "I told you," he said softly. "You shouldn't have brought me here." The Queen raised her staff, glowing with energy. "You think you can stand against the Dominion?" He took a slow step forward. "No, I'll make sure it never rises again." Something in his tone, steady, almost sad, made her hesitate. For the first time in her long life, Queen Vishara felt something she didn't recognize. Not anger. Not pride, fear. The great throne ship Vornketh floated in the black silence of space. From the outside it looked peaceful, a golden spear among the stars. But inside, chaos and fear walked in every corridor. The humans had captured no Zaith ship before. Yet now one human had taken control of half their systems in one night. The Queen sat in her private chamber, eyes fixed on the hologram reports flashing before her. Every image showed wrecked corridors, deactivated drones, and unconscious guards. There was no blood, no killing, just silence. "Explain this," she ordered coldly. Her generals stood trembling. None dared meet her gaze. "He moves without sound," said one. "He disables our weapons before we fire. Majesty, we have never seen anything like him." "Then find him," she roared. "I will not let one animal mock my empire." Her wings spread wide and the air trembled with her fury. But before anyone could respond, the doors hissed open. A small group of soldiers dragged Marcus Hale inside, his hands bound in glowing energy cuffs. His uniform was torn and burned, his face calm. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "You dared to bring ruin inside my ship," she said. Marcus looked around the room, then at her. "You brought me here. I just walked through the door you opened." The guard struck him across the face, but he didn't flinch. The hit barely turned his head. Vishara raised her hand. "Enough." She stood and stepped closer, her claws tapping softly on the metal floor. "You are a curious creature, human. My soldiers fear you more than my wrath. Why?" Marcus said nothing. She smiled, a sharp, cold expression. "Do you think silence will protect you?" He looked her in the eye. "I don't need protection." The guards tensed, but Vishara raised her claw to stop them. She studied his face, not hatred, not pride. Just calm determination. She turned to her chief scientist, Zir, who waited nearby. "Take him to the interrogation chamber. I want to see what his body hides." The chamber was cold and white. Bright lights burned above. Strange alien machines surrounded a single metal chair in the center. Marcus was locked in place, his arms and legs held by magnetic restraints. Zaith scientists moved around him, their claws clicking against metal panels. They cut small samples from his skin, took blood, measured his heartbeat. But every test gave strange results. "His cells heal too fast," one scientist said. "His muscles resist paralysis. Even his heart slows only by his own will. He should be dead already." Zir looked at the Queen through the observation window. "Majesty, humans are built for death worlds. Their home planet is more violent than any place we know. Perhaps this explains their madness." Vishara watched silently. Her purple eyes followed every twitch of the human's face. Marcus opened his eyes suddenly and looked directly toward her, even though she was behind a one-way screen. Zir froze. "Majesty, he can't see you through," but Vishara knew. He could feel her. Somehow that human gaze reached through the glass. Then Marcus spoke softly. "You're watching me, aren't you, Queen?" The scientist stepped back in shock. He smiled slightly. "You should ask yourself what I'm watching." One scientist shouted, "How does he know?" Vishara leaned closer to the glass. "What are you watching, human?" Marcus tilted his head. "How much you rely on fear. How every soldier on this ship obeys because they're afraid of you. It's not strength. It's weakness." The Queen's claws pressed against the glass. "You dare lecture me?" "I don't need to," he said simply. "You already know it's true." For the first time in years, she felt her throat tighten. She turned sharply to Zir. "Increase the power. Let's see if he still speaks with confidence after pain." Zir obeyed, pressing the control. Blue energy flowed through the restraints. Marcus's body tensed, shaking, but no scream came. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The scientists watched in disbelief. The Queen whispered, "Why do you not scream?" Marcus finally looked up, sweat running down his face. His voice was calm. "Because pain means I'm still alive. I've been through worse." Zir lowered the power, terrified. "Majesty, he'll die," Vishara hissed. "He won't, he's human." Marcus smiled faintly at that. "You're learning." The Queen's curiosity. Later, the human was taken to a reinforced cell, a small, dark room surrounded by energy fields. Cameras watched every move. But instead of resting, Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed as if meditating. Outside, the Queen watched from the screen, her expression unreadable. She had faced assassins, monsters, and generals. But this one man disturbed her more than all of them. "What drives you, human?" she whispered to herself. "What keeps you from breaking?" She decided to find out. Hours later, she entered the cell herself, alone. The guards protested, but she ignored them. Marcus looked up when the door opened. "No guards this time?" he asked quietly. "I do not need guards to face a broken soldier," she said. He smiled. "Then maybe you're braver than I thought." She stepped closer. The glow of the energy field cast gold light over her armor. "You think bravery matters?" "You are my prisoner. You will tell me your army's plans." Marcus shook his head. "I don't think you understand, Queen. This isn't about armies. This is about what happens when you push humans too far." Her claws clicked against the floor. "And what happens then?" He looked straight into her eyes. "We stop fighting to win. We fight to end it." The Queen frowned. "End it? You mean destroy your enemies?" "No," he said softly. "We destroy the idea of the war itself. We make sure no one ever dares to start it again." His words stayed in her mind, echoing. Vishara turned to leave, but before stepping out, she paused. "Tell me something, human. Why do they fear your name?" Marcus looked down for a moment. Because I do what others can't. I make hard choices. Sometimes I become the monster to stop worse ones. Her eyes narrowed. Then you are a monster. He looked up calm. Maybe. But monsters like me are born when queens like you start wars. She said nothing more. She left the room, her steps echoing in the hall. But inside, her thoughts were not calm anymore. The learning machine days passed. The Queen ordered daily interrogations, and not torture, but questions. About Earth, about human strategy, about their history. Marcus never lied. But he never revealed military secrets either. Instead, he spoke of strange things: art, music, friendship, sacrifice. Things the Zaith could not understand. One day she asked, "Why do humans sing before battle?" He smiled. "Because songs remind us who we are, even when we're about to die." She stared at him for a long time. In her empire, soldiers went to war in silence. They had no songs, no names after death, only numbers. The thought disturbed her. She tried to hide it, but Marcus noticed. "That's your weakness," he said softly. "You make your people fear you. But fear doesn't build loyalty. It only builds obedience." Veshara turned away. "Fear built an empire that lasted 10,000 years. He answered quietly, "And I'm going to end it in one." The whisper in the dark, that night. Strange transmissions spread through the throne ship. Uncoded signals carrying human voices. They weren't orders, they were stories. Recordings of humans talking about their families, their dreams, their homeworld. Simple voices filled with warmth. The Zaith soldiers who heard them felt something strange. Not anger, not hate. Something softer. Some even hesitated to follow orders. When the Queen learned about it, she stormed to the cell. "You are spreading your poison." Marcus looked up from where he sat. "Truth isn't poison. You just never tasted it before." Her claws clenched. "You dare to infect my soldiers with weakness?" He shook his head. "Not weakness, humanity." Veshara struck the wall beside him, cracking metal. "Enough." But Marcus only looked at her calmly. "You can kill me, Queen, but you can't stop the idea. It's already moving through your ship. The more you fight it, the stronger it gets." Her wings trembled. "What idea?" He stood slowly, meeting her eyes. "That you don't have to be a monster to lead." For a moment, the Queen said nothing. The silence between them was heavy. The silence of something beginning to change. The power failure. Suddenly, alarms echoed across the ship. Red lights flashed. Engineers shouted through comms. "Power down in Sector 7. Containment breach. Shields offline." The Queen turned sharply to Marcus. "What did you do?" He raised his hands. "Nothing. But your ship has a lot of angry people in it." On the control screen, Zaith soldiers ran through the corridors, confused. Some were freeing prisoners, others fighting each other. The transmissions had spread far wider than she thought. The Queen looked at him with fury and disbelief. "You caused a rebellion?" "No," Marcus said softly. "You did. I just showed them what you are." The lights flickered again, then died completely. The room plunged into darkness. When emergency lights came on, Marcus was gone. The cell door hung open. The Queen's voice shook for the first time. "Find him," she screamed. "Find the human." The last transmission hours later, her communication screen blinked. A single message appeared in human language. "Don't look for me, Queen. Look at what your empire has become." Attached was a recording, footage from the ship's internal cameras. Zaith soldiers helping wounded humans, engineers refusing to fire weapons, drones shutting down rather than fight. Her own people were changing. She stood alone in the silence of the throne room. The great Queen of the Dominion felt something she had never known before: doubt. She looked at the last line of the message. "The war isn't over, Veshara, but it doesn't have to end with fire." For the first time, she whispered his name aloud, not in anger but in fear. Marcus Hale. The Zaith throne ship Vornketh, once a symbol of fear across the stars, drifted through dark space like a wounded beast. Fires burned along its hull and its once bright shields flickered weakly. Inside, the corridors were filled with smoke, confusion, and whispers of one name: Marcus Hale. The human ghost had escaped. He moved unseen, silent like a shadow. Every deck he crossed, systems failed. Every soldier who faced him vanished, not killed, but left unconscious or locked inside their own cells. The Queen's once loyal army was breaking. In her command chamber, Queen Vishara stood surrounded by flickering screens. Her purple eyes glowed with fury and fear. Reports came in one after another. Deck 7 lost power. Containment breach in engineering. Life support failing in the lower levels. Her generals spoke in panic, shouting over one another. He's one man, the Queen roared. You are thousands. How can one human destroy my ship? No one answered because deep down they all feared the truth. It wasn't just the man. It was what he made them feel. Marcus Hale was not fighting with weapons anymore. He was fighting with ideas, the human's path in the dark corridors. Marcus moved with calm precision. His armor was damaged, his arm bleeding from a plasma burn, but his steps were steady. He carried no gun now. Just a small tool stolen from the engineers, a hacking spike. With it, he accessed control panels and turned the Dominion's strength against itself. Doors locked at his command. Power rerouted. Entire security networks blinded. As he moved, he whispered softly into a communicator he had built from scraps. This is Sergeant Hale. To any survivors or prisoners aboard this ship, find the blue lights. Follow the marks. Freedom's waiting. All across the ship, humans and captured aliens began to move. They followed glowing blue marks on the walls. Marks Hale had drawn using glowing coolant. They didn't know who made the marks, but they trusted the path, because every mark meant someone was fighting for them. The Queen's decision back in the command hall. The Queen's advisors begged her to escape. Majesty, General Kreth said, voice shaking, the human has reached the reactor level. If he destroys it, the ship will explode. Vishara's wings twitched. Then he will die with us, but Majesty, we cannot. Silence, she hissed, slamming her claw against the console. This is my ship, my throne. I will not flee from a single creature. Her pride burned hotter than her fear. But in truth, a small voice inside her, the one she tried to ignore, whispered a terrible thought. He said he would end the war. Maybe this is how. She silenced the thought with rage. Send every remaining unit to the reactor. Seal him inside. The reactor core. The heart of Vornketh glowed with blue energy. Giant cables pulsed with power, and the air shimmered with heat. The sound of humming engines filled the chamber like the heartbeat of a god. Marcus stood at the center, hands on the console. His face was calm, eyes focused. He wasn't here to destroy everything, and not yet. He connected the hacking spike and began to copy data, ship schematics, communication codes, and most importantly, proof. Proof of every atrocity the Dominion had committed. Billions of lives burned, planets enslaved, species wiped out, all recorded here. He whispered to himself, You want to rule the galaxy, Queen? Then let the galaxy see what you've done. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed behind him. He turned. Dozens of Zaith soldiers entered the reactor room, weapons drawn. Behind them, the Queen herself appeared, her armor shining like molten gold. The soldiers surrounded Marcus, their claws clicking, their eyes filled with hate and fear. Vishara raised her staff. It ends here, human. Marcus looked at her calmly. Yes, he said softly. It does. The confrontation. The soldiers charged. Marcus moved fast, and not like a hero in stories, but like a survivor who knew every move had to count. He grabbed one soldier's weapon, turned it, and fired. Energy bolts struck the walls, making explosions of light. He dived behind a console, rolled, and threw a device, a flash bomb made from stolen parts. Light filled the room, blinding the Zaith. When the flash faded, half the guards were down. Marcus stood breathing hard, his armor cracked, smoke rising around him. The Queen stepped forward, unharmed. You think this proves your strength? You are still alone. Marcus shook his head. No, not alone. As if on cue, doors opened above them. Dozens of humans and freed prisoners appeared on the catwalks. They held stolen weapons, armor pieces, even tools. For the first time, Zaith soldiers hesitated. Vishara looked up, eyes wide. Her own ship, her own prisoners, were turning against her. Marcus spoke again, voice steady. You called us weak. But weakness isn't dying for others. It's living only for yourself. He pointed to the screens where data streamed, files, images and videos transmitting across the ship and into space. All your crimes, your secrets, every planet will see them. Your empire ends today. The Queen's claws shook with fury. You dare shame me before the galaxy? Marcus looked at her with quiet sadness. No, you did that yourself. The Queen screamed in rage and charged. Her staff glowed with red energy, striking the floor, sending shockwaves across the room. Marcus barely dodged, the blast throwing him into a wall. She raised her staff again, ready to strike. You are nothing, a fragile creature pretending to be strong. Marcus stood slowly, blood running down his face. Maybe, but I stand for something bigger than myself. That's what makes me human. He grabbed a broken pipe nearby and blocked her next attack.
Sparks flew.
Each blow shook the floor, but Marcus didn't fall. Finally, he used her own power against her, twisting her weapon aside and striking the control panel. The floor exploded with light as the reactor began to overload. Warning alarms echoed. Reactor unstable! Core meltdown in 3 minutes. The Queen stumbled back. What have you done? Marcus picked up her fallen staff and threw it aside. I gave you a choice. You wouldn't take it. He moved toward the exit but paused at the door. Get your people off the ship. I've already sent the coordinates to your nearest colony. You can still live. She stared at him, speechless. You would save us after all we've done? He looked at her one last time. We don't destroy what surrenders. We protect what learns. Then he was gone. The escape as the reactor's glow grew brighter. The Queen stood frozen, surrounded by flashing lights and chaos. Her soldiers shouted at her to flee, but she couldn't move. Her empire, built on fear and domination, was collapsing around her. And the one who broke it wasn't a god, wasn't a monster, just a human. Finally, she shouted, Evacuate! Everyone, leave the ship! The soldiers ran. Escape pods launched into the dark sky, bursting from the sides of the great throne ship. From space, the Vornketh looked like a dying star, glowing brighter and brighter until, boom. A blinding flash filled the void. The ship exploded into fragments, scattering golden fire across the stars. Among the wreckage drifted silence once more. Aftermath hours later, a Zaith rescue fleet arrived. They searched the debris for survivors. The Queen was found alive inside an escape pod, armor burned and cracked, eyes distant. When she woke, her first words were not of rage. They were of disbelief. Where is the human? No one could answer. There was no body, no signal. Just a single transmission still echoing through the wreckage. A human voice speaking calmly. This isn't the end, Queen. It's the beginning of something better. The Queen listened in silence, then whispered softly, Marcus Hale. For the first time in her long life, she felt something new. Not pride, not hate, respect. The message to the galaxy days later, the transmission Marcus sent spread through every communication network in the galaxy. Billions saw the truth. Images of burning colonies, enslaved species, Zaith warships firing on civilians. And in the end of the message, one line appeared in human and Zaith language. The Dominion ruled by fear. Let the new world be ruled by understanding. The Zaith worlds erupted in chaos. Some refused to believe it. Others demanded change. But all knew one thing. The Queen's power was broken. She stood before her council, silent as her empire crumbled piece by piece. Majesty, one general said weakly. What do we do now? The Queen looked out the window where stars burned quietly. We listen, she said softly. We learn. The legend grows. Rumors spread fast across the galaxy. Some said the human ghost died in the explosion. Others claimed he escaped in a stolen pod and vanished among the stars. But every soldier, human or alien, remembered his words. He fought not to win, but to end the war. And so the name Marcus Hale became something more than a soldier's name. It became a warning. To tyrants it meant fear. To the weak it meant hope. To the Queen it meant a lesson she would never forget. Silence ruled the Zaith throne world. For the first time in 10,000 years, the great palace of Vornkal stood empty of songs and pride. The banners of the Dominion, once bright with gold and purple, now hung torn and burned. Outside, the skies were filled with ships. Not in battle, but in surrender. The once proud Zaith fleet drifted in orbit, their weapons powered down, their leaders silent. On the main transmission channel, every commander awaited orders, but no order came. Because Queen Veshara, ruler of the Dominion, destroyer of worlds, the one who had enslaved entire systems, was missing. The Queen in hiding far below. Deep in the ruins of her capital, Queen Veshara walked among shadows. Her royal armor was gone. She wore only a plain black cloak, her face hidden from the people who once bowed to her. Each step echoed in the empty corridors. She passed halls filled with dust and cracked walls, Once these halls shined with glory. Now they were graves of memory. She touched one broken wall and whispered softly, "We built everything on fear, and fear is what destroyed it." Her claws trembled as she remembered his voice. Calm, human, fearless. We don't destroy what surrenders. We protect what learns. For weeks she had searched the stars for his trace. No ship, no signal, only rumors. Some said the human died in the explosion. Others said he lived, hiding somewhere among the stars. She didn't know which one she wanted to believe. The arrival of the humans, that morning. The sky of Vornkel changed. From orbit descended a formation of human alliance ships, sleek and silver, cutting through the atmosphere like silent guardians. They carried no war banners, no threat, only the emblem of peace. But to the Zaith, even peace from humans felt terrifying. Crowds gathered as the ships landed on the old royal square. From the flagship stepped soldiers in black and blue armor, disciplined, calm and watchful, and leading them was Admiral Sarah Lorne, a tall woman with cold eyes and steady voice. On behalf of the Human Alliance, she said through translators, "We come not as conquerors but as witnesses. The Dominion has fallen. The war is over. But justice must begin." Her words carried across the city and the people listened in silence. Some wept, some bowed, others simply stared. The hidden meeting that night, deep inside a forgotten tunnel, Veshara lit a small fire. She had not slept for 3 nights. Her mind was full of questions. Why had the humans spared her world? Why did they not finish what they started? Why did Marcus Hale, the man who could have ended her, let her live? As she sat alone, a sound echoed behind her. Soft footsteps, careful, human. She froze. Her claws flexed, ready to fight. "Who's there?" A shadow stepped into the light. The figure was tall, armored, face hidden under a black helmet. "Easy," the voice said quietly. "I didn't come to fight." Veshara's heart stopped. That voice, calm, steady, familiar. "Impossible," she whispered. "You died." The man removed his helmet. Marcus Hale stood before her, alive. The human returns, he looked older. His armor was damaged, his hair shorter, a scar across his left cheek. But his eyes, the same human eyes that faced death without fear, burned with calm strength. She stepped back, trembling. "How?" "The explosion. Escape pod," he said simply. "Didn't plan it. Got lucky," she couldn't speak. For the first time in her long rule, she felt unsure of herself. Finally, she said, "Why are you here, human? To finish what you started?" Marcus shook his head. "No, I came because this isn't finished, not yet." He stepped closer to the fire and sat down. "Your empire's gone, but your people aren't. They need a leader who understands what comes next." Veshara frowned. "You mean someone who bows to humanity?" Marcus looked into the fire. "No, someone who learns from it." The conversation of enemies for hours, they spoke. No guards, no soldiers, just 2 survivors of a war that nearly ended everything. Marcus told her about Earth, how humanity had risen from its own mistakes, how humans once destroyed each other, learned, rebuilt, and swore never to repeat it. Veshara listened in silence. "You humans," she said slowly, "you fight like no other. You fear nothing, not even death," he smiled faintly. "We fear plenty. But fear doesn't control us." She looked away. "That is why you won. You believed in something I never understood." Marcus turned to her. "It's not about winning. It's about what comes after." She raised her eyes. "And what comes after, human?" He stared into the fire. "Peace. Real peace, and the kind no one can take by force." The decision by dawn, the queen stood at the edge of the ruins, the first sunlight touching her face. She looked toward the human ships resting on her once proud world. She could order her remaining forces to fight. She could flee into the void. But instead, she made her choice. When the sun rose fully, she walked alone toward the human camp. Soldiers raised their weapons, but Marcus lifted his hand. "Stand down." The soldiers obeyed. The queen stopped before Admiral Sarah Lorne, who looked at her with careful eyes. "I am Queen Veshara of the Zaith Dominion," the queen said, her voice firm though her hands trembled. "I come to surrender, not to chains, but to change." The humans exchanged surprised glances. Marcus stepped forward. "She means it," he said quietly. The admiral studied them both. "Then she will stand trial before the Alliance Council. If she accepts peace, her people will have a future. Bashara nodded. Then take me to your council. Let my people live. The journey to Earth for the first time in history. A Zaith royal ship entered human space, not as an invader, but as a guest. Through the wide glass of the observation deck, Bashara saw the blue-green world of Earth. Oceans glittered under sunlight. Cities shone with light, not fire, she whispered softly. So this is your home? Marcus stood beside her. It's small, he said with a smile, but it's enough. She turned to him. You could have destroyed us. Why did you stop? He looked out the window. Because we've been where you are. Once long ago, humans nearly destroyed everything. But someone had to say enough, now it's your turn. She said nothing. But inside something changed, a small, quiet understanding. The trial. The hall of the Alliance Council was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Old enemies now watching the fallen queen. Bashara stood tall, her voice calm as she faced judgment. I do not ask for mercy, she said. I ask for a chance to rebuild what I broke. The Dominion was born from pride. Let it die in truth. Murmurs filled the hall. A reptilian envoy shouted. How can we trust her? She ruled through blood. Before she could answer, Marcus stepped forward. Because she's already lost everything, he said. And yet she's still here, choosing to face judgment. That's more courage than most leaders ever show. The room fell silent. Finally, the council speaker rose. The council will not execute the queen. Instead, she will return to her people, not as ruler, but as teacher, to rebuild her world under peace. The new beginning months passed. Bashara returned to Vornkal no longer wearing armor or crown. Instead, she worked among her people, helping rebuild cities, restoring lands, freeing slaves. When alien workers from other worlds arrived to help, she welcomed them personally. Her people watched in confusion, their once terrible queen now walking beside humans, teaching children, planting crops. When one young Zaith asked, "Why do you work for them?" she smiled softly. "I don't work for them," she said. "I work with them." That's what peace means. The final meeting one quiet evening, Marcus returned. He found her standing by the rebuilt palace, watching the sunset. You kept your word, he said. She smiled faintly. And you kept yours, Umpa, to protect what learns. They stood in silence for a while, watching the orange sky. I never thanked you, she said softly. For sparing me. Marcus looked at her. You don't thank someone for doing the right thing. She turned to him. Will humans stay in our skies? He shook his head. No, you don't need us anymore. As he walked away toward his ship, she called out, Marcus. He turned, she looked at him with calm eyes. The galaxy will remember your name, not in fear, but in respect. He smiled, a quiet human smile. Then maybe we finally did something right. The stars stretched endlessly before the human alliance fleet. Captain Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching distant worlds glow in the black sky. The war was over. The Dominion's fleets had been shattered, their queen had surrendered, and countless enslaved species were free. Yet Marcus did not feel victorious. He felt responsibility. He had survived the impossible, but the galaxy still had scars, deep ones that would take generations to heal. Beside him, Admiral Sarah Lorne watched the star systems pass. You did something no one thought possible, she said. You ended a war without destroying a single world unnecessarily. Marcus shook his head. No, we just gave them a chance to learn. That's the hard part. She nodded, understanding. The humans had fought like legends, yes, but the real victory was in teaching mercy and wisdom. The Queen's transformation on Vornkal. Queen Vishara walked among her people. Gone was the armor, gone was the crown. She had returned not as a conqueror, but as a teacher, a leader of a new age. She helped rebuild cities, freed labor camps, and worked to establish councils where her citizens could speak freely. At first, her people resisted. They had been trained to obey fear, not reason, but slowly they saw the change in her. She did not command with claws and wings. She commanded with respect, fairness, and courage. And she remembered the human who taught her. Marcus Hale, she whispered to herself, the one who changed everything. First contact with freed worlds, Marcus traveled with a fleet of human diplomats and Zaith observers to the first liberated colonies. On the planet Raxus Minor, once a Dominion prison world, He walked among the survivors, humans, Zaith, and other enslaved species. Children ran to him, not with fear but with curiosity. "Are you the ghost?" one small alien asked. Marcus smiled faintly. "No ghost, just a human who wants peace." He looked around and saw the ruins of cities. Smoke still rose from melted metal. He knelt to the ground and touched the scorched soil. "This land remembers," he said softly. "We will build again, together." The survivors cheered. Not for Marcus, not for humans, but for hope, the diplomacy of a soldier. The Human Alliance organized a council on Vornkal, inviting representatives of freed worlds, former Dominion systems, and human envoys. Queen Veshara attended, standing beside Marcus. The other delegates eyed her with caution. "You ruled through fear," one reptilian delegate said sharply. "How can we trust you now?" Veshara bowed her head. "Because I have seen the cost of fear. I have seen what happens when power is absolute. And because I will not fail them again." Marcus added, "And because she chose to change. The galaxy does not need rulers who rule by terror. It needs leaders who learn from their people," the delegates whispered among themselves. Many were skeptical, but the human presence calmed them. Marcus never threatened. He never demanded. He simply reminded them of the power of courage and mercy. Rebuilding trust days passed. Trade began between systems. Former enemies worked together to repair cities, farms, and spaceports. The Queen traveled to distant colonies not to command, but to learn. She met alien scientists, human engineers, and freed soldiers. One evening, she sat with a group of children, Zaith and humans alike, teaching them to read maps of the stars. "Why do you help them?" a young Zaith asked. "Because one day the galaxy may call on you," she said softly. "And you should know how to act with justice, not fear." For the first time in her life, the Queen felt humility. Not weakness, humility. She had once ruled by terror, but now she ruled by example. And everywhere she went, people spoke of the human who made her see the truth. Marcus's quiet leadership. Marcus did not wear medals or banners. He traveled quietly, visiting liberated worlds, checking on refugees and ensuring that no violence would erupt again. Soldiers who had once feared him now told stories of the human who survived the impossible, the man who did not kill to win but fought to teach. On the planet Larithia, a council of species asked him, "Why humans? Why intervene?" Marcus smiled. "Because we've been where you are. We've seen empires fall and civilizations suffer, and we know that sometimes the right thing to do is stand up, even when it's dangerous." His words spread like wildfire. Across the stars, more systems began to think differently. Rulers questioned their methods. Soldiers questioned orders, and people dared to hope. The ghost of the stars, despite his fame, Marcus stayed largely unseen. He let the stories grow. The human soldier who changed the galaxy. The ghost who walked through the Dominion. The one who taught a queen mercy. Each story inspired thousands. Some feared him. Most admired him. All remembered him. Even Queen Veshara would often speak his name softly in private, thinking about the lessons he had taught her. "Marcus Hale," she whispered one night. "You were right. Peace is stronger than fear." And she meant it. The first treaty, the Human Alliance organized the first galactic treaty on neutral ground, a station floating between the stars, far from any former Dominion world. Leaders gathered, humans, Zaith, reptilians, avians, and hundreds of other species. Queen Veshara signed first, her hand steady, a symbol that even the proudest empire could change. Marcus watched quietly from the side, never taking credit. He had done his work. The galaxy was safer, not because he fought, but because he showed the value of mercy, courage, and understanding. The treaty declared freedom for all former Dominion worlds, the rebuilding of colonies, and the establishment of a council to prevent future wars. For the first time in millennia, the stars were filled with hope, not fear. The message across the galaxy before returning to Earth. Marcus sent a final transmission. "The war is over. Tyrants fall. The weak are no longer slaves. The galaxy belongs to all who live in it, not to the few who rule by fear. Learn, cooperate, protect each other. That is the way forward." Marcus Hale, human soldier. Across millions of star systems, this message was broadcast. It did not threaten. It did not command. It reminded. It became a legend. The human legacy years passed. Queen Vishara rebuilt her empire into something new, a coalition of planets, guided by councils, schools, and fairness. She often sent messages to Marcus updating him on progress. He never replied directly. Instead, he watched from afar, making sure no one abused the lessons he had fought to teach. On Earth, humans continued their own exploration and diplomacy. But across the galaxy, Marcus Hale's name was remembered, not as a conqueror, not as a warrior, but as the human who proved that courage, mercy, and wisdom could change even the most fearsome empire. "One man can't conquer a galaxy," a young Zaith student wrote in a journal. But one man can change the galaxy forever. And that man was Marcus Hale. The final reflection late one night. Standing on the observation deck of his ship, Marcus watched a distant star system. A fleet of former Dominion ships passed by peacefully, their pilots learning, cooperating, building rather than destroying. He whispered to himself, "We did it, not with fear, not with power, but with the right choice." And somewhere across the stars, the human ghost, the soldier who walked into legend, finally allowed himself a quiet smile. The galaxy had learned. The Dominion had fallen, and humanity had risen, not as conquerors but as teachers. Marcus Hale, the human soldier they all feared, had become the human they all respected.